First time I've ever really held a mic. But I did write down a little bit of clip notes just to keep me on track here. And I'm going to start a timer. Follow simple suggestions. First, I'd like to thank Reach Church for hosting this event and Firm Foundation for making this happen. My sponsor for coming out with me today, and God for making it all happen. My name is Declan, and I suffer the human condition. My sober date is June 22nd, 2024.
What's up, man? Me too.
I won't spend too much time talking about what it was like because most of us know, and our loved ones got to see it happen firsthand. I was raised mostly by my father and my grandparents. I had a good childhood with a few traumatic experiences, like most others might have had themselves. My mother and father both suffer from the same thing I do, the human condition, but their symptoms manifested a little bit differently. My mother, a lot like myself, suffered from drugs and alcohol. My father, it came in a little bit different manner. A lot of anger, a lot of wrath. It made our relationship tricky, but we both got older and figured things out for ourselves. None of those things that happened in my childhood that were traumatic led to me becoming an alcoholic or an addict. They're not the reasons I am the way I am. I was taken to church for most of my young adult life, up until I was about 13 or 14 every Sunday, not by my own choice. My grandparents were very devout Christians, and today I thank them profoundly for that, but when I was younger I didn't see it that way. My relationship with Jesus, I really put that together at a young age, but I didn't follow through with it. As soon as I had the choice to leave or stay, I chose to leave. I didn't want to go to church anymore, and that's truly where I feel that this whole thing started for me. I became very rebellious, failed out of high school. My life very quickly was consumed by drugs and alcohol. They were everything. They were part of everything I did. Everywhere I went, it was all dictated by whether or not those were an option. This went on for years until I met a girl that I thought would be the solution to all my problems. I put myself into detox knowing that she would never want to be with someone like me unless I had taken care of those things. That's what my mom told me that was a good place to start, so I went and did it. I completed IOP at 19, won that girl's heart, and we fell in love. We ended up having a child together. It's my son Noah. He's now 8 years old. My desire to stay sober was very short-lived. My circumstances had changed, but spiritually at that time I was completely dead. I suffered a trifold illness, body, mind, and spirit, and my spirit was dead. My body was overcome by drugs and alcohol, and emotionally I was distraught, restless, irritable, discontent, all of the things. As much as I loved that girl and my son, they were never enough to keep me clean. Relapse after relapse, the delusion that I was in control of my life became extremely painful. I blamed everyone and everything else. I blamed where I had lived, jobs, people, the repercussions, circumstances, my children's mother, you name it. I thought, what had I done before? Was it love that had to be enough? I just needed more love. I needed more to love. So I had a second child. I drank the day I first held my daughter. I drank before she was born. I drank after she was born. As much as I had to live for, I remained restless, irritable, and discontent still with life. It wasn't until the day my son asked me, standing up, "Why are you falling asleep standing up, Dad?" looked me in my eyes and said that to me, and that shook me. That was when I did something drastic. I said, you know what, I need to take a little bit more serious approach to this. I shipped myself out to Ohio. I did a 45-day stay out in Ohio. I came back convinced that drugs and alcohol were my problem, and that I just needed to remove everything associated with those, every person, every place, change all of my circumstances. If I just removed all of it, I'd be all right. But the reality was I could never escape myself. I took myself everywhere I went. Within a year, I was back where I started and worse off. I couldn't live with myself anymore. I was beaten. I gave up. By the grace of God, 2 weeks prior to that, I had met my sponsor now, James, and I truly believe now that was a divine intervention. A family member had reached out, and he told me, you know, I think you should get into the rooms of AA. I think you should go out, try some meetings, get connected. I was still drinking, using at the time. But I went anyway, reluctantly, and I sat in that room and I listened to what people had to say, their experiences, and I saw someone who had what I wanted and very clearly knew how he got it. And I wanted that for myself. So I asked that man for his phone number, and I kept that phone number in my pocket. I not only suffer from alcohol, but everything else that we try to use to control our lives. You know, I use something to wake myself up, something to put myself to sleep, something to make me happy, something to make me tired, something to make me laugh, something to, for everything. I try to control every aspect of my life through drugs and alcohol. I woke up in the hospital with that number in my pocket after an overdose, and I was truly standing at the turning point at this point. I had become willing to do anything and go to any lengths to recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. I went out, I took a simple suggestion. I started back at detox. I knew there was more to it. I've been through that once before. I called my sponsor and I said, what do I have to do? And he told me, he said, as soon as you get out of detox, we're going to get to the work. You suffer a spiritual malady and you need a spiritual solution. And that's something I didn't realize before. That's a whole completely new concept to this. Like, okay, well, I have a relationship with Jesus, I thought. I wasn't feeding that relationship. My cup was empty at the time. With him, I admitted that ultimately I had no control over my life, and that left in my own hands, I'm going to destroy it every single time. I had to admit that. That it had gotten completely unmanageable. And then I had, once I start, whether it's drinking, using, if I start, I can't stop. And if I do manage to stop for a short period of time, I don't stay stopped. I will return. It's not about if I will return, it's about when I will return to use. Because every time I went back, I became willing to explore the relationship with God that I once had as a child, that my grandparents instilled into me that was so important, that I just brushed off my shoulders for most of my life. I now took that as paramount advice. It was like a revelation I had that my grandparents really were trying to save my life from my earliest days. And that relationship with God would restore me to sanity, because I was truly insane with the way that I was trying to control life, manipulating people, manipulating things, people, places, things, everything was just completely insane. I was an insane person. I then turned my life over to God. I've been baptized twice in my life, once as a very young child. I was maybe 4 or 5 at the time, and they did it just because I was like, yeah, I want to get baptized, like, can you save me? I want to be part of the crowd at church. And I didn't truly understand what it was. And then again, as a late teen, I got baptized again, and I was saved. And that time, I felt this. I felt God within my life at that time. I had to turn all of my life over to God, and I realized that just getting baptized, it wasn't that didn't mean that all my problems went away or that everything was just okay from that point forward. I still struggled. And it wasn't until I did this step that I turned my life over to God, all of it, every single aspect of it, the future of my relationship, my financial futures, everything. Every single aspect of my life, whether I'm happy or sad, that's in God's hands. Today I accept it for what it is at face value, and life is much more fulfilling. Today my cup runs over with God's love in every moment. Even when things are bad, when things are good, I can feel Him there as long as I turn to Him. My will had become His, total surrender. I had a new manager and a new boss, universal. I dove deep into my fears and resentments, discovering how imperative it was to address my moral defects, because I am morally defective. I'm lustful, I'm envious, I'm wrathful, I'm all 7 of the deadly sins. I'm all 7 of them all at once, if left to my own vices. My self will run rampant, will destroy everyone around me and everything I touch, and I had to address that somehow. But I couldn't defend myself against something I didn't know was there to defend myself from. So I had to identify those things, and it was through the 4th step that I was able to do that. I took all of these discoveries to James and to God for witness. God already knew all of my defects. There was no surprise to Him, but I had to reveal all of these things to James, and in turn, I turned to God and told Him as well. I had to acknowledge them. I made my confession, and this is where my life began to transform. I knew that a power greater than myself, God, would remove these defects at any place, any time, and infinitely. All of them. He wasn't going to leave any. I have to pray now, every day, anywhere, at any time, without fear. I don't. It was something that was really hard for me to overcome, was the fear of what someone else might think of me for having my relationship with God, praying in certain places. Today, I think the most important thing is what God thinks of me and not what another person thinks of me.
Amen.
I've compiled a list of people in my life that myself will run riot and harm, which was quite an extensive list. And I'm in the process of making those amends on those people's time. I continue to take inventory every day, because this is something that I struggle with every day if left unaddressed. My human condition persists, but daily, through God's strength, I can address it. I ask God daily to allow me to see His will and the strength to carry out His will, even in the face of fear. The gratitude I have for God, for the program of AA, and the relationships I have created as a result are endless. I don't have fair weather friends anymore, I have real friends. And we're all brothers and sisters under God. I could never do this by myself. Today I have a sponsor who knows he's my sponsor. I have a home group, and I have commitments that I make by being responsible and available for the first time in my life. I was never able to be both of those things at the same time. Today I can. And most importantly, I have a relationship with God. All of these things that I've been through in my life, I wouldn't change them if I could, because these experiences have all made me uniquely qualified to help the next person. It'd be selfish of me to keep this to myself. And the more I explored this program of AA, the more I realized this program perfectly lined up with everything I was taught in church growing up. I mean, down to some of the sayings, like, take up thy bed and walk again. The transformation that has taken part in my life, I never imagined was possible. I saw myself doomed. I saw myself, I had self-pity, self-despair, self-delusion. I'm self-deceiving. And all of these things can be addressed through God. All of them. Truly, it was the pinnacle of anything I had learned was that my entire recovery hinges upon my relationship with God. Every spiritual defect I have, every moral defect, every vice, all of it, there's an answer, there's a solution. You just have to reach out and seek it. I go to church on Sundays now. Every Sunday, I take my kids. My kids love it. Never imagined my little daughter would, the happiest I'd see her during the week is when I get her up in the morning and I say, hey, come on, we're going to church. And she's 2 years old, she can barely speak. She says, church, we're going to church. Church, starts freaking out. Like, yeah, wish I was as excited at your age. But I can have relationships with my kids now that I couldn't have before. I can have relationships with my parents. I'm fixing relationships. And it's all through the grace of God. God does all the work for me. I just follow the suggestions. I do the next right thing to the best of my ability. How was it done? How was all this done? Really, the program of AA, I had to become willing to go to any lengths, and to become willing to go to any lengths for me was a tough pill to swallow because it meant doing a lot of things that I didn't want to do. I walked to my sponsor's house numerous times. We sat weekly for 2 to 3 hours at a time to get through the work, and it was all work that now looking back at it, I'm so eternally grateful I did, because my life wouldn't be what it is today without doing the work. Faith without works is dead, and work without faith is dead. I believe that is all my time, but I would also like, again, to thank everybody for coming out tonight and hearing me speak, and for the opportunity to share my testimony. Thank you again.
Right on.